Hello, hello, hello. This is the Vanilla JavaScript podcast. I'm Chris Ferdinandi. Thanks so much for joining me. Today, I'm talking about when you should use a state-based UI library and when you might just stick with vanilla JavaScript. So, what is state? Just to get started, if you've never heard of the concept, one of the primary concepts behind JavaScript web apps is state. State is just data. So why do they call it state instead of data? Well, there's a time-bound aspect to it. State is data at a particular moment in time. It's the present state of your data. Today, many web apps use state to generate their UI. With a state-based UI approach, you store all of the data for your user interface in a JavaScript object, and then you use JavaScript to build the DOM based on the current state of the data. So, for example, let's say my data is an object with a wizards property, and that wizards property is an array with 3 wizard names in it. I also have a template function that takes that data and returns an HTML string. Inside that function, I'm going to check to make sure that my wizards property has a length. So if it's an empty array or a value of null, I want to return a paragraph that says there aren't any wizards yet. Otherwise, I want to show an unordered list. So I'm going to return a UL element, an unordered list, and then I'm going to loop through each of the wizards in my wizards array and wrap a list item around each one and pop the wizard name right in the middle. And then I can take whatever string gets spit out from that template function and I can inject it into the UI. Anytime my data changes, like let's say I delete a couple of items out of the array, I can repeat this process, run my template function to get back the string, inject it into the UI. I don't have to think about what the UI currently looks like. All I have to think about is what my data should look like, and then the template function figures out the UI for me. So how do you decide when you should use state-based UI and when to use traditional DOM manipulation instead? And if you do choose state-based UI, should you roll your own or use an existing third-party library? I personally don't think every project or even most projects need state-based UI. It's an overused approach to building UIs that definitely has its place, but isn't the right tool for every project. State-based UI is a good choice when you have a user interface that's updated dynamically and changes based on different conditions. For example, a list of items that are shown or hidden based on some filters is a good candidate for state-based UI. An e-commerce store where text on an add to cart button changes if the item is already in your cart. And then there's also maybe a checkout link that contains the number of items in your cart. That's another great candidate for state-based UI. A lot of moving pieces, some of them interrelated and tied to the same piece of data. Interfaces that are rendered once and never get updated again are probably better suited to more traditional approaches. Similarly, dynamic UIs without many moving parts, such as a show and hide component, are often simpler to implement with vanilla DOM manipulation. Third-party libraries do have a few benefits. Despite advocating heavily for Vanilla.js, if you need state-based UI in a project, I think that using an established third-party tool brings a few benefits that make it a better choice than creating your own. First, they've been tested and used by a wide range of developers and have addressed many of the bugs and edge cases you're likely to encounter. They also provide access to plugins, existing components, and design patterns that you can take advantage of. And if you're working with a team, third-party libraries provide access to an existing pool of developers and generally pretty good documentation. Now that you understand how state-based UI works, you may find third-party libraries a little bit easier to learn and feel like you can make a more informed choice about which one to use. I don't think state-based UI is the right tool for every project, but when it is, a third-party library is often a good choice. All that said, micro libraries and compilers are often better than full-fledged libraries. There are a handful of state-based UI options that I think are better choices than large client-side libraries like React and Vue. For example, if you're looking for a really simple string-based syntax, you might enjoy Reef, my 3 kilobyte state-based UI library that has similar conventions to Vue, for example, or React, but has some additional features. If you or your team like React, Preact is a 3 kilobyte alternative that has the same API, but is orders of magnitude more performant. If you like Vue, Evan You, the guy who built it, also built Petite Vue, a small alternative distribution designed for progressively enhancing UIs. Svelte is a compiler that lets you author state-based UI, but compiles it into vanilla JS and old school DOM manipulation for better performance and really small JS files. And I think the most exciting one on this list, Astro, similar to Svelte, another compiler that builds on the approach used by Svelte. It allows you to mix and match Svelte, React, Vue, and more, compiling it all into vanilla JS. These alternatives provide you with the benefits of using an established library, but result in less JavaScript shipped to users and better performance for the things that you build. Anyways, that's it for today. If you want to finally master JavaScript, head over to vanillajsguides.com and check out my pocket guides and video courses. As a listener of the show, you can take 30% off with the code podcast at checkout. See you next time. Cheers.